The silence that follows a breakup with a super empath is unlike any other. For the narcissist, it isn't the quiet of a closed chapter or the peace of moving on. Instead, it is a heavy, ringing silence that feels like standing in the center of a house they spent years building, only to realize they were the ones who set the match to the curtains. In the beginning, they might try to fill that void with noise, new partners, louder parties, or social media posts designed to prove they are thriving. But the silence is smarter than that. It waits for the lights to go out. It waits for the moment they are alone with their own thoughts. It is the silence of total self-inflicted ruin, and it becomes a permanent resident in their mind because they finally understand that the bridge they burned was the only one that led to a version of themselves they actually liked. Most people who talk about narcissism focus entirely on the victim's pain. They talk about the gaslighting, the lies, and the cold way you were discarded. While that pain is incredibly real and valid, focusing only on your side of the story leaves a hole in your healing process. To truly let go, you have to understand the psychological black hole the narcissist falls into after losing someone like you. When a narcissist loses a super empath, they haven't just lost a partner or a source of supply. They have lost their connection to reality. You were the only person who looked past the expensive clothes, the charm, and the ego, and actually saw the human being underneath. You were the only mirror that didn't just reflect back their fake mask, but reflected back their true potential. Now that you're gone, they are left staring into a dark, empty room with no one to tell them who they are. This silence follows them into every new relationship they start. They might find someone new within days, but that new person is usually cheap supply, someone who only likes the performance. The narcissist quickly realizes that while the new person admires the mask, they don't actually know the person behind it. This creates a terrifying sense of isolation. Imagine being surrounded by people who are cheering for a character you're playing on stage, while you are screaming for help from the wings and no one hears you. That is the narcissist's new reality. They are haunted by the memory of how it felt to be seen by you. You didn't just clap for the performance, you understood the person. Without that deep, soulful connection, every new interaction feels hollow and plastic. They are starving at a banquet because nothing tastes as real as the truth you provided. Understanding this collapse is the final key to your freedom. For a long time, you probably wondered if they were okay, if they were treating the next person better, or if they even realized what they lost. The truth is, they realize it every single time the room goes quiet. They cannot recover because they destroyed the only person who was willing to help them fix their own broken foundation. They are trapped in a cycle of trying to find you in people who don't have your depth and failing every time. When you finally see that their internal world is a graveyard of their own making, the why behind their actions doesn't matter as much anymore. You stop looking over your shoulder to see if they're coming back, and you stop wondering if they've changed. You realize that their silence is their punishment, and your absence is your power. You don't have to wait for them to heal. You just have to realize that they've already lost the only thing that could have saved them. To truly grasp why the narcissist is so haunted by your absence, you have to understand the mechanics of narcissistic supply. For most people, self-esteem is an internal engine. It's something we build from the inside out. But for the narcissist, that engine is completely broken. They don't have a solid core, they have a void. To keep that void from swallowing them whole, they need constant external validation just to feel like they exist. This isn't just about being vain or liking compliments. It is a desperate survival-level need. Without eyes on them, without someone reacting to them, they begin to psychologically dissolve. This is why every room they walk into has to become a stage, and every person they meet has to become an audience member. They aren't living a life, they are putting on a 24-hour production just to stay afloat. However, once you look closer, you realize that not all supply is created equal. There's a very strict hierarchy to the attention they crave, and most of what they get is what we call cheap supply. This is the surface-level admiration they get from strangers, casual friends, or social media followers. It's the likes on a photo, the laughter at their jokes, or the "wow, you're so successful" comments from people who only see the polished exterior. While this keeps them going in the short term, it's fundamentally unsatisfying. It's exactly like trying to quench a deep, burning thirst by drinking salt water. The more they consume of this shallow praise, the thirstier and more frantic they become, because deep down they know the people cheering for them are only cheering for a fake character. They know that if those people saw the real person behind the curtain, they would turn and walk away. This is where the super empath enters the frame and completely shatters their world. You were not just another face in the crowd clapping for the performance. From the very beginning, you possessed a level of perception that was almost dangerous to their defenses. You saw the mask, yes. You acknowledged the charm and the grandiosity, but you also saw right through it. You saw the wounded, terrified child that the narcissist has spent their entire life trying to bury under layers of ego and lies. You saw the shame they carry and the deep-seated fear of being nothing. But instead of being repelled by that darkness, you did something that no one else in their life had ever done. You stayed. You reached out a hand to that broken child and offered to love the real, unpolished, vulnerable person underneath the armor. For the narcissist, this experience was beyond supply. It was a psychological resurrection. For the first time in their life, they didn't have to perform to be worthy of attention. With you, they felt a rare, intoxicating sense of peace because they were being loved for the truth rather than the lie. That kind of premium supply is incredibly rare. Most people don't have the depth or the courage to see a narcissist's core and remain standing there. You offered them salvation, a way out of their fake life and into something real. You were the only person who made them feel like a human being instead of a hollow shell. This is why their loss of you is catastrophic. Now that you are gone, they are forced back into the world of cheap supply. They are back to drinking salt water and performing for people who don't actually know them. They might find a new partner tomorrow, but that person will only love the mask, and the narcissist will know it. They are trapped in a nightmare where they are surrounded by people who adore them, yet they feel more invisible than ever because the one person who truly saw them is no longer there. They destroyed the only mirror that showed them they were real, and now they are forced to live the rest of their lives as a ghost, haunting their own fake reality. When the narcissist finally pushes a super empath too far, they aren't just losing a partner, they are losing their one and only piece of evidence that they are actually a lovable human being. You have to understand that for their entire life, they have operated under the assumption that they are fundamentally defective. To survive that feeling, they built a fortress of ego and lies. But then you came along and did something impossible. You saw the defect, you saw the mess, you saw the shame, and you stayed anyway. Your love was the only real thing they ever owned. It was the only time they didn't feel like a fraud because you were loving the person behind the curtain. They became addicted to that feeling of being truly seen, yet their own internal wiring is designed to self-destruct. Because they don't believe they deserve that love, they compulsively set out to ruin it. They betray you, they lie, and they test your limits until the very foundation of the relationship shatters. But here is where the verdict comes in, and it's the part that haunts them forever. In the past, when other people left the narcissist, it was easy for them to rewrite the story. They would tell themselves, that person was too weak, or they only loved the mask I wore. They never really knew the real me. This allowed the narcissist to keep their ego intact. They could blame the other person's lack of depth for the breakup. But they can't do that with you. You were the one person who saw it all. You navigated their storms, you saw their darkest corners, and you understood their pathology better than they do themselves. When you finally walked away, you didn't leave because you were fooled or because you were too small for their personality. You left because you saw exactly who they were and decided that they were no longer worth your light. The way you left is what makes this a life sentence for them. You didn't leave in a screaming, hysterical rage. You didn't give them a crazy ex story to tell their friends. If you had left in a mess of tears and anger, they could have used that to feel superior. They would have said you were unstable or emotional. Instead, you left with a quiet, icy clarity. You left with the unshakable dignity of someone who had done the work and realized that your own soul was more important than their survival. That kind of exit is a silent courtroom verdict. It says, I saw the truth, I offered you salvation, and you chose the lie. Now I am choosing myself. There is no arguing with that kind of silence. It is a finality that doesn't need to raise its voice to be heard. For the rest of their life, this narcissist will carry your departure like a lead weight. Every time they meet someone new, the memory of your exit will whisper in the back of their mind. They know that no matter how many people they trick into loving their mask, the one person who actually saw their soul eventually threw it back at them. Your departure wasn't a rejection of the character they play on stage. It was a rejection of the actual person hiding in the wings. You prove that even when they are seen at their deepest level, they are still someone who eventually gets left behind. That realization cracks something inside their psychological structure that no amount of new supply can ever glue back together. They are left with the crushing knowledge that the only person who truly understood them is the one person who will never, ever come back. To truly understand why the narcissist world falls apart when you leave, you have to look beyond the surface level of attention and validation. You have to understand that for the narcissist, you weren't just a partner, you were a biological necessity. Most healthy adults have what we call self-regulation. They can process their own stress, quiet their own fears, and manage their own anger. But the narcissist never developed this. Their inner world is a constant swirling storm of chaotic emotions, deep-seated shame, and explosive rage. They are psychologically incapable of sitting with themselves. To survive, they have to outsource their emotional labor to someone else. They turned you into their external nervous system. You were the container they used to dump all the toxic waste they couldn't carry themselves. When they felt empty, they fed on your light. When they felt ashamed, they projected it onto you until you felt like the problem. You were the only thing keeping them from a total internal collapse. Think of it like this. The narcissist is a high-pressure steam engine with no safety valve. Without someone to bleed off that pressure, they would literally explode from the inside out. For the duration of your relationship, you were that safety valve. You were the steady ground that remained unshaken while they threw their worst storms at you. You had an extraordinary capacity to remain grounded, to absorb their volatility, and to process their mess so they didn't have to. You weren't just supportive, you were functioning as their emotional processor. When they were spiraling into a dark hole of worthlessness, your presence acted as a stabilizer. Your resilience and your depth allowed them to feel like they were a coherent person, because you were holding the pieces of their fractured identity together for them. You were doing the heavy lifting of two souls, and you did it so well that they started to believe they were doing it themselves. But then the moment finally came when you walked away. And when you left, you didn't just take your love with you. You took the safety valve. You took the container. Suddenly, for the first time in a long time, the narcissist is left standing in the middle of their own storm with nowhere to dump the rain. Every bit of the internal filth they used to pour into you, the hidden shame, the simmering rage, the paralyzing fear of being nothing, is now flooding back into their own mind with nowhere to go. There is a terrifying backlog of emotional toxins that they have no idea how to handle. This is the deepest part of their collapse. It's a total system failure. They are experiencing the raw, unfiltered weight of their own pathology. And because they never learned how to regulate themselves, it is absolutely suffocating. They will try to find a replacement, of course. They will move on to a new person with lightning speed because the silence of their own mind is too loud to bear. But here is the catch. Most people aren't built to be an external nervous system. The new supply might be fun, they might be attractive, and they might be great for an ego boost, but they don't have your specific combination of depth, resilience, and supernatural perception. They don't have the capacity to absorb a narcissist's darkness without breaking. The narcissist quickly realizes that this new person is a shallow container. The moment the narcissist tries to dump their internal chaos into this new partner, the partner either runs away, hits back, or crumbles instantly. No one can hold the weight like you did. No one can quiet the noise the way you could. This is the ultimate victory of your healing. While the narcissist is frantically searching for a new dumping ground and failing to find one, you have reclaimed that massive amount of energy you were spending on them. You have stopped being an external nervous system for a person who didn't appreciate you and started using that strength to regulate your own life. You've redirected that extraordinary capacity for love and patience inward, toward your own growth and your own peace. The narcissist is left drowning in a storm of their own making, looking for a shore that no longer exists. They are finally forced to feel everything they tried to make you feel, while you are walking away, finally light, finally free, and finally steady on your own 2 feet. The most haunting part of this entire experience isn't the memory of the fights or the lies. It's the ghost of the person you saw beneath the mask. As a super empath, you have a rare, almost prophetic ability to see the gold buried under the mud. You didn't just look at the narcissist and see a villain. You saw a human being who was capable of so much more. You saw their untapped potential for genuine love, their hidden capacity for kindness, and the version of them that could have been whole if only they had the courage to heal. You held space for that person every single day. You treated them not just as they were acting, but as who they could be. This belief was the most valuable thing they ever possessed because, for a brief moment, you made them believe in that version of themselves too. You gave them a glimpse of a life where they didn't have to lie, hide, or hurt others to feel significant. But here is the tragedy that the narcissist has to live with forever. They chose the armor over the healing. When the pressure got too high and the truth got too close, they didn't choose to grow. They chose to retreat into their pathology. By betraying you, they didn't just throw away a relationship. They executed the only version of themselves that was actually worth fighting for. They murdered their own potential. Now that version of them is a ghost that follows them into every room. Every time they tell a new lie or manipulate a new partner, they are reminded that they once had a path toward being real, and they turned their back on it. They are haunted by the knowledge that they had a chance at salvation, a chance at genuine human connection, and they traded it for a cheap plastic mask. They are left with the crushing realization that they are the architect of their own emptiness. The final blow comes when they look at your life now that they are gone. While they are stuck in the same exhausting cycles, performing the same tricks for new people, they see you doing the one thing they cannot. You are flourishing. They watch you from a distance, through mutual friends, social media, or just the heavy energy of the silence, and they see you laughing, creating, and growing stronger every day. Your growth is the most devastating evidence against them. As long as you were together and you were struggling, they could tell themselves that the relationship was just complicated, or that you were both the problem. But now that you are free, your peace is a mirror they cannot shatter. It proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that you were never the broken one. It proves that the relationship was the anchor dragging you down, and the moment you cut the rope, you soared. Your healing is their truest judgment. It isn't a judgment delivered in a courtroom or shouted in an argument. It is a judgment lived out in your daily happiness. Every time you feel a moment of genuine joy, every time you succeed in your career, and every time you form a healthy, deep connection with someone else, you are sending a silent message that echoes in their mind. That message is, I was never the problem, and I am better without you. This is unbearable for the narcissist because it means they are no longer the protagonist in your story. They are just a dark chapter in a book that has become a masterpiece. Your peace is completely out of their reach, and there is no amount of manipulation or hoovering that can pull you back into the chaos once you've seen the view from the mountaintop. You are living the life they could have had if they had chosen the truth, and watching you live it is the ultimate price they pay for their betrayal. The ultimate irony of the narcissist's journey is that they spend their entire lives running away from the very thing they need most, the truth. By losing you, they have lost their last line of defense against the void. They are now trapped in a loop of shallow interactions and hollow victories, forever chasing a high that only your depth could provide. But while they are destined to repeat the same dark chapters with new faces, your story has moved forward. You have done what they never could. You faced the pain, you sat with the silence, and you transformed. You are no longer the source of their stability. You are the architect of your own. The super empath isn't just a label for how much you can give to others. It is a testament to how much you can survive and how powerfully you can rebuild. The silence that once felt like a wound is now your sanctuary, and the peace you found is a fortress they can never again breach. The mirror has been broken, the container has been reclaimed, and the ghost of who they could have been is no longer your burden to carry. You didn't just survive a relationship, you survived a war for your very soul, and you won. Now the light that you once used to keep them warm is yours to keep. Use it to build a life so vibrant and so authentic that the version of you who once stayed in the ruins feels like a distant stranger. You have been clarified by the fire, and the person you are becoming is someone the narcissist wouldn't even recognize. Not because you've changed your heart, but because you finally realized your worth. Walk away with your head high, knowing that the greatest revenge isn't a word spoken in anger, but a life lived in total, beautiful defiance of everything they tried to make you believe about yourself.